Hey everybody, welcome back to News from Heaven. This is the show where we take an annotated journey through the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg to try to free our minds. Does that sound cheesy? Free our minds? Make our minds more freer, something like that. Today, we're going to be doing that by checking out Regeneration, our spiritual life cycle, and leadership in heaven. And why would those three things occur in sequential order in a paragraph of any text, let alone a Swedenborg type text? Did you guys enjoy the first episode? If you want the show to keep going, like and subscribe. This is the way that not just lets YouTube know that this is cool, but lets us know that this is something you want to do. But actually, hold judgment. I mean, that was just our first episode. We're just getting started. I don't know what I'm doing yet. This episode's going to be really, really good. Like I said, we're reading Swedenborg. But what we're really doing is we are trying to free our minds. Because I don't know if you're like me. Yes, I do. Everybody's like this. We walk around throughout the day and we got something keeping us down, some kind of network of thoughts and feelings and beliefs and interpretations of life that while there's times when we're feeling decently happy, this stuff is just trying to crush us, trying to make whatever your weakness is, this stuff is trying to go at it. These are thoughts about your value as a person, or thoughts about the way life has turned out, or things to come. All this mess that really steals the potential that we have to have really happy, useful lives. So how do we break out of that? Because when this is all you have, when you just go from one dark cloud to the next dark cloud, it paints a very bleak picture of life. And the picture of life that we get, no matter where we drop into Swedenborg, is that no, there's something much cooler up here. And just reminding ourselves gives us an option. Now it's not just which dark cloud do you want. It's like, hey, do you want to let a little sunshine in too? So the sunshine we're going to let in today comes from Swedenborg's Heaven and Hell. Download it in the link in the description and scroll your way down to 279. And if you're wondering why there's a little baby in a diaper up in that line, watch our previous episode where we talked about the spiritual wisdom of angels. Continuing now, let's see what we can learn about life and about the way we think. It's much the same for every person who is being regenerated. Huh? That's a weird word. What did he even mean when he says regeneration? I don't want to know about regeneration. How long is it going to be till he tells us about regeneration? Regeneration is rebirth as a spiritual person. Now, let me get a better highlighter color. There we go. We got a definition in there. Because what Swedenborg asserts is, yeah, we go through a thing where we start as like a little embryo, right? And then we get born and we become hopefully a better formed person than this, but we become a person. Swedenborg is saying that's just the start, because we also go and become a spiritual. Oh, there we go. I was having a little delay there because it takes longer for spiritual stuff to get drawn on the screen. We also become a spiritual person, which is symbolized by blue streaky highlighter. So we go in another progression in our development. And this, though, this is called birth. This is called regeneration. When we are being regenerated, we, scroll past those notes, they're cool, but we got no time. We are brought first into the innocence of infancy. And this is interesting because if you saw our last episode, he's talking all about innocence and giving it new definitions, and that it's this willingness to participate in a certain way in life. It's not just being cute and little. But here he's talking about the innocence of infancy. But as far as I can tell, this would be where our spiritual development cycle comes in, because he's saying the innocence of infancy is realizing that we know nothing of truth and are capable of nothing of good on our own. Isn't that cute when little kids say, I know nothing of truth and I'm capable of nothing of good on my own? Now, this is like our spiritual infancy, because you remember we have this process that we're going through where we're trying to get born again. Swedenborg says that is the meaning of that phrase. Well, you go through the same progression there, from being a person to a blue, shiny spiritual person, that you do from being a little teeny gleam in your parent's eye to being yourself. So that's the spiritual infancy, realizing that we know nothing of truth and are capable of nothing of good on our own, which might sound like, oh, we're just adding to this darkness here. Not only are you no good at sports and, you don't have much fashion sense, but you don't even know anything of truth. You're not capable of anything of wisdom on your own. No. The reason why is because the pressure that the negative parts in our minds put on us is all centered, a lot of it centered on personal responsibility, in that it's your fault when things go wrong in your life. But the truth that we're getting at here is, no, at best, we're co-managing our life with God, but really, we're receiving from our source. So when they start to criticize your performance, you say, no, you talk to my partner. You talk to the divine about that, because really, divine is calling the shots. So we start to build a little shield from this negative stuff that's always trying to get us down. So, but only from the Lord. Okay, right. So realizing we know nothing of truth and are capable of nothing of good on our own, but only from the Lord. And that we long for and seek what is true and good simply because it is true and good. And this is the turnaround. We're no longer seeking what's accurate and what's positive and powerful because that can bolster our self-image. Now we're looking at the value of the thing itself. It's the difference between, oh, sure, I'll give to the orphanage if you put my name on a plaque, versus I'm thinking about what this is going to do for those kids, plaque or no plaque. The prize is the happiness that they get, right? That's a cliche example, but apply it to your own life in any context you come across it. These gifts are granted by the Lord as we advance in age. So as we're advancing physically in age, we start to get these spiritual gifts, realizing there's nothing of truth. We're capable of knowing nothing of truth and capable of nothing of good on our own. And it's interesting that Swedenborg describes that. He says, oh, we receive these wonderful gifts from the Lord, right? That's a bow. This is a gift, right? But if I didn't know any better, I would say that was not a gift, but an insult to say you know nothing of truth and nothing of good. In my life, I have found, after a long grappling with what Swedenborg means by that it is a gift, because it's a freedom. It's freedom, not a freedom. It's freedom from the stuff the dark clouds are trying to get into you, is to hook you by your sense of you're guilty of what went wrong here, but instead to understand how helpless we are in the way that other people see us, in the way that we are in a lot of sense, in the way that life unfolds. Understand we don't need to be heaping more of that blame on ourselves that we have, and realizing that we know nothing of good on our own. That's like Christmas morning opening up this thing that says, like, guess what? I'm taking care of stuff. And life is not the burden that it seems like it was. To me, yeah, man, I would even take that over some Christmas socks. Although this year I do need those, so maybe next year I can get that. The gifts are granted by the Lord as we advance in age. We are led first into knowledge about them. So first we're just knowing. Then from knowledge into intelligence. So this is some kind of applied knowledge that we can like make a speech about. And finally from intelligence into, what's a good color there? Wisdom. So we have this progression of, you hear something, a spiritual concept like this that sounds weird at first. You don't know anything true or good on your own. But then you start to really get what that means because you've applied it. You've stuck it into your thought matrix and seen like, oh, when I apply I don't know anything of truth, it really sends back these negative thoughts in whatever way they're coming. Then we move finally into wisdom, where it's instinctive, it's intuitive, it's just what we do. And here comes the kicker. Always hand in hand with innocence, which is, as already noted in this and the previous episode, the recognition that we know nothing of truth and are capable of nothing of good on our own, but only from the Lord. Again, you just like, I'm going to invest all my credit taking in how cool the divine is, because the divine is trying to lift up everybody all the time. It actually is a much better system. No one can accept, and why would I waste your time talking about all this stuff? Well, just because, no one can accept heaven without this belief and this perception. So anything that is an absolute requirement to get to heaven, and you all know, heaven is a state of mind, according to Swedenborg. That this is a state that includes these kinds of thoughts we've been talking about. It is the state that gets it so that it doesn't matter what the weather is in our life, emotionally, cognitively, even event-wise, that you're happy because of love pouring in and through you. That is heaven. And why don't we all have it? Isn't that what everyone wants to get to? Well, you can't without this perception. This gift that seems like an insult is the only thing that can really open us up to the kind of humility and recognition of interdependence that creates heaven. It is the prime component of the innocence of wisdom, which was a big topic. Since innocence is being led by the Lord and not by ourselves, all the people who are in heaven are in innocence. It seems to me like, wow, if I had invested in innocence, back in the 90s, I would be really happy right now, because innocence, like every time he talks about it, it's like the stock of innocence goes up. And if you're sitting here saying, I don't really get what do you mean by innocence, check out the previous episode. All the people who are in heaven are in innocence, since all the people who are there love to be led by the Lord. And here we first get to our keyword, leadership. Ooh, how do you spell leadership? Scientists have not reached a consensus on that. We titled this show, Leadership in Heaven, because how are things structured there? Are they structured there like they are here? And I want to raise you one and say, it doesn't really matter how organizations work in heaven or in the life after death. What matters is the step behind that. What's leading us inside? Because really, what leads us is what makes all these structures have their meaning. And what we're going to give you today is a good, healthy dose of what leads who in heaven. So first we introduce this concept of being led by the Lord. They know that to be led, we'll purple every lead we find, led by oneself is to be led by one's self-centeredness. And self-centeredness is loving oneself. People who are in love with themselves, and I'll put a little red heart, because haven't you just felt like, man, I'm in love with myself? You may feel like, no, I'm not. I hate myself. The way Swedenborg describes being in love with yourself is not having some really good self-esteem or feeling like you are a valuable contributor in the world. Loving yourself is basically wishing for dominion over everyone else. That when your will is not enacted or respected or whatever, you're mad. Now, you ever done that? You ever loved yourself in that way? Right. Are not willing, people who, and this is key, that he's not just trying to guilt trip you, he's trying to give you keys. How do you get out of the cycles in your own mind? Because people who are in love with themselves are not willing to be led by anyone else. That's not such a big deal, except that innocence is being willing to be led by the Lord. And without innocence, you can never get to heaven. So you might think, this is so great that I don't like the idea that anybody is responsible for the accomplishments in my life, or that anybody might be pulling the strings, or that I'm running anybody else's program other than me. I don't want anyone in that part of my steering, in my steering committee. That's not a good move, because heaven is better than that. The mindset of spontaneous love and wise caring and everything that sets to rest these decades-long messes, emotional, intellectual messes we've got ourselves into, heaven's better than that. And heaven requires being willing to, hey, I don't care if I'm the smartest person in the room. If God is smarter than me and it wants to make some calls, that's fine with me. That is, to the extent that they are absorbed in divine good and divine truth. For being absorbed by these is being in heaven. Wow, I feel like we're just throwing out definitions left and right. So being absorbed in divine good and divine truth is being in heaven. And innocence, which Swedenborg basically equates with heaven, is being led by the Lord and not by ourselves. So if we sort of pick out these points where they meet in the middle, this is the mindset that allows you to, once you've reached that trajectory, once that becomes how you live, suddenly you become impervious to everything that drags us down. And I don't mean suddenly like it's a switch you flip and then it's done, but you will notice moments of clarity. This is what got me hooked on Swedenborg, is there's these moments of clarity and relaxation when these little tyrants in your mind that have been leading you into these same loops forever and ever, suddenly they run into something like this. And they're like, well, I don't know how to get around these concepts. I don't know how to, I'm here for my usual meal of Curtis being unhappy. But instead, he's got like glowy red and purple stuff in his head. What happened here? Consequently, the heavens are differentiated according to their innocence. And this is Swedenborg will always run along and go from conceptual stuff to the structure of the life after death, because in a very cool way, it's the same thing. For example, people who are in the outermost or first heaven are in innocence of the first or outermost level. So let's put them here. Let's say that's green innocence. People who are in the intermediate or second heaven are in innocence in the second or the intermediate level. Let's say that that's where they've got some blue innocence there. People who are in the intermediate, or people who are in the inmost or third heaven, though, are in innocence of the third or inmost level. Let's put that like the innocence of love in red. So they are the very innocent of heaven. Now, we've got a little picture of heaven here on the left, but according to Swedenborg, profile, don't fail me now, it failed me. These are the levels of your mind. It's not like heaven is not made by somebody got up there, like buried some stakes, put up a little fence, and like you get sent into this part of heaven because you just couldn't get around this fence. The stuff in the mind creates the differences in heaven. So whichever level you're open to, God is trying to flow into all three levels of your mind. You open on the first one, you're enlightened enough that you can start to inhabit the first level of heaven, second level, third level. I don't need to spend forever on this, but do you get that it's a psychological condition that creates the external conditions? Because in the end, that's what matters. That's why we make movies and things about what goes on in hearts and minds, because shouldn't that mean more than where physical objects are? In this world, you don't get that. It's weird, but the spiritual world Swedenborg describes is structured intuitively like that. What a tangent, but at least I got to draw a really awesome looking head out of it. So these people here, like the people who have really got it all figured out, like they're really letting everything in, so they are the very innocent of heaven. Since above all others, they want to be led by the Lord. So their leadership is, I don't want to be messing around and figuring out the wrong thing and be vulnerable to all the stuff that comes through my mind. I want the Lord to lead me. They want to be led by the Lord the way infants are led by their father. What? I have a couple of questions about this. Well, first of all, you could say, well, what about the mother? Why has it got to be masculine? But the other thing is, infants are not led by their father. I have an infant. This is what happens. Fathers say to their infants, can you please put that down? We're in a store. And the infant says, no, I'm not going to. And okay, but I'm going to put you in the cart. No, we're not going to put you in the cart. Sorry. Okay. Didn't mean to not. Okay, you can do anything you want. Just don't yell. That's about how it goes. If I had that kind of leverage over God, I would be a rich man. No, what I think he's getting at here, though, is you think about, and Swedenborg does use the word, the whatever Latin word, I don't know that stuff, is translated infant. To mean, sort of throughout childhood. But I think what he's really pointing out here is like the condition of actually being an infant. Like think about pre-walking when they're just in their car seat and you move them all around. And what they do is just, okay, you're putting me over here. You're picking me up. You handed me something. This is fun to play with. Oh, you took it away. What's happening next? It's not that we get reduced back to that, but that there is a component in there that shows like this innocence, this heaven of innocence has that in it, like such a trusting, loving partnership. There's a reason why you take pictures of that kind of relationship and put it on a card about how wonderful life is, because there is something awesome in there. Now, we are going to obviously develop more than that, but there is wisdom in that. This is why they accept divine truth directly into their intent. So when they know what's right, they do it. There's not all this struggle and not all this like, wait a second, you've got some good concept coming in, but that's going to ruin my plan to get the better of my brother-in-law, or that's going to ruin my plan to secretly get everybody to notice how great I am at something. And so these forces in your mind push back, like, wait a second, I don't want that in here. We get to the point where there's none of that pushback. Anything good is just welcomed as like, oh yeah, your family, come on in. Okay, making it a matter of life, whether they receive it directly from the Lord or immediately through the word and sermons. This is why they have so much more wisdom than the angels of the lower heavens. No offense, angels of the lower heavens. Because this is the nature of these angels, they are closest to the Lord, who is the source of their innocence. And they are also distant. So what's the proportion? The closer you get to the Lord, the closer you get to the Lord, the farther you get, sorry, I just had to combobulate myself, farther you get from your self-centeredness. So much so that they seem to live in the Lord. And I can feel a diagram bubbling up inside my soul. So I think we've got to do it right now, because we are led always by something. I'm not giving you the option of, hey, throw away your independence and have the Lord lead you around. We are here. Perhaps you see yourself in this terrible stick person. And we are always, let's give us a face. What the heck? We are always led by something. our face has got to go away because I've got an idea. We're always led by something. Here's our choice. Swedenborg does break it down to basically this one little choice. On the one side, you got the Lord. And the Lord is out there, the Son of Heaven, radiating out goodness and truth, everything that's awesome, in particular, love and truth, right? You got the warmth of love, the light of truth radiating out, okay? And what it is to be led by the Lord, you think of the Lord just as a being or a deity or a person, but really what the Lord is also is an embodiment of the qualities of things like love, compassion, but really, let's call it altruism, because the Lord is pure altruism. What all God is interested in doing, according to Swedenborg's vision, and many others I might add, is all that God is this constant effort to make others happy and to do what's good for them. So that emanation comes out of God into our mind, in the form of impulses of good stuff. And should we suffer ourselves to be led by the Lord, what being led by the Lord is when that comes in, we say, oh yeah, I want to do that. I want to bring this out into life through some kind of action. So we make it lead where we go. There's your option A. Option B is this tangly, twisty mass of red and black that is what Swedenborg would call our proprium or our self-centeredness. I'm going to use the word here, ego. Now, that may not be the way that Freud or whoever made it up intended it initially, but the way people use it today means your sense, the negative sense of self, that your will to be better than everyone, get the last word. And I don't have to rattle it off to you. You know my ego, I know yours. And that ego wants to lead as well, and it will send its tendrils of reactionism and scheming and paranoia and self-deprecation, all kinds of stuff. Even at the same time, you're so great and you're terrible at the same time, so it could just wash you all around. And that tries to get you to make dysfunctional choices where you go out and you hurt somebody. You bring that into life. So each of these are an option for action, and these are directional. The more you act from the ego, the more you move in that direction. The more you act from love or the Lord, the more you move up into there. That's what it means to be led by the Lord. In outward form, they look simple, even like infants or little children in the eyes of angels of the lower heaven. So these are people who have gotten to the point, and you and I could get there if we want, and even don't have to go die and be some angel that some guy's writing about. You can get there in the mind that we're in right now, where you are just really in partnership with love. They look to people who do not know they look like people. This is so interesting. They look like people who do not know very much, even though they're the wisest of angels. So even though they got it going on, they don't necessarily have all their degrees, in a little folder with them. They are in fact aware that they have no trace of wisdom on their own, and that to be wise is to admit this, and to admit that what they do know is nothing compared to what they do not know. Now, what I want to do is highlight, because these are two keys to spiritually themed humility, because you have, aware that they have no trace of wisdom on their own. And the other one is what they do know is nothing compared to what they do not know. And it's kind of these are sort of your real esoteric-y and your real practical versions of spiritual humility, and hopefully you can get both, because they have no trace of wisdom on their own. That is just the acknowledgement that whenever you think a smart thought or a wise thought or something like that, it just delivers to you as a package. You don't even really think about it. It's so intuitive. I'm sitting here talking to you for 20 minutes. Now, I know there could be a good argument that I haven't said anything intelligent, but what I do know is I'm not piecing together these thoughts in a careful sequence before they come out. I'm just opening my mouth, pretty much. And this is just how any of us think and talk, is that we're on this conveyor belt where things that are intelligible come out. So I would say you could read into that further to realize, well, somebody's putting this stuff together. It's not like God is sitting there giving you every word, but there is a chain, a supply chain that's moving down. And just to realize, wait a second, even though I'm the output of whatever talents I may have, it doesn't mean that they originated in me. That's one. But then this other one is what they do know is nothing compared to what they do not know. So anyone can get behind that. If I had here the greatest physicist ever to live, what that person knew about the universe would be minuscule compared to what they didn't know. So those are two different sort of natural and spiritual ways you can come at the same thing here. Knowing, recognizing, and perceiving this is what they call the first step toward wisdom. And one last little sentence here that's of no consequence. These angels are also naked. Get the kids away. Get them away. It's too late, because nakedness corresponds to innocence. Again, spiritual world organized because of internal properties. Do we need clothes forever? Do they go away? That's a talk for another time. But yeah, just in case you didn't want to have to worry about wardrobe, the more innocent you get, the less you need it. And that's the news from heaven. Did you have any fun? Did that work? I mean, what we're trying to do here, like I said before, is get into this picture where we're sitting around bothered by all kinds of things that are false. According to Swedenborg, everything that's trying to drag us down is false. So how do we give ourselves a fighting chance, at least put the truth on the menu so that we can have times in our day when it scoops us up? Did that happen for you today? In the comments, I would love to hear, did your mood even improve in any way from the start of this show to the end of it? But then also, did you feel like you took anything out of this that you could go apply to life? And again, like I said last time, I'm hoping that you thought of something from these ideas that I didn't even think of. Some tool you pulled out, some insight you had. Because if we can just sort of amass those in the mighty YouTube comment section, then this not only people can come here on the internet looking for some kind of help, and maybe they get something out of what I said. I think there's a low probability, but they scroll down to the comments, because you do that, and they start to pick out things as well. So leave your wisdom here. That would be awesome. Like and subscribe, if you would, because really the news from heaven will only happen if you do that. Because we're not only is YouTube trying to know, should we show this show to other people or not? We're trying to know, is this any good? Is it helpful to have me with some markers looking over Swedenborg stuff? If you say it is, then we're going to do it. That's how it goes down. Thank you for being part of this pilot, or whatever you want to call it, this initial exploration of our new show, News from Heaven. In the new year, what we're going to have is we're going to go back to Swedenborgian life, your beloved Swedenborgian life, on Monday nights in this time slot. But News from Heaven is going to keep on going. It's going to be debuting in the new year on Thursday at 12:30. So like a lunch break if you're on the U.S. East Coast, just when you're getting home from work in the U.K. So you will, if you need to catch the live thing, of course, everything ends up pre-recorded anyway. But so we're hoping to be able to have Swedenborgian life and News from Heaven and keep going and going. And who knows? If you all say you like News from Heaven, we may even do more than one a week, because they're pretty short and sweet. So weigh in. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a good comment, and that will make us feel good. And hopefully this made you feel good. If not, I'll do better next time. Thanks.